Sheikh Hamdan's wife asked his girlfriend to leave. His girlfriend refused. She was asked to leave directly by the woman who had the title, who had the official acknowledgement, the public position, the recognized place in the story that the world was permitted to read. Not through the management, not through the indirect pressure of palace decisions that reorganize the private world from above. Directly, one woman to another. The wife of Sheikh Hamdan looked at the woman her husband had been loving before the marriage, and through the marriage, and asked her to remove herself from the picture, to step back, to take the relationship and the years and the children and whatever claim she believed the private world had given her and redirect all of it away from the official life and the official future and the man at the center of both. The wife asked her to leave, and she refused. The refusal was not what anyone had expected, not the palace, not the management that had spent years maintaining the separation between the two worlds and that had constructed its entire strategy around the assumption that the private world was manageable, that the people inside it could be moved when the official world required them to move. Not probably the wife herself, who had arrived at the asking after a long process of understanding what she knew and deciding what to do with it, and who had probably arrived at the conversation believing that asking directly, clearly, from the position of the officially recognized wife would produce the specific result that the management's indirect approaches had not always fully achieved. She asked, and she received a no. And the no changed the shape of everything that followed. To understand the refusal, you have to understand what the girlfriend was refusing. Not simply the request to leave. That is the surface of it. What she was refusing was the premise behind the request. The premise that the official title gave the wife the authority to determine what the private world did. The premise that, because the official story acknowledged one woman and not the other, the unacknowledged one was in a weaker position, was someone who could be asked to remove herself because the removal would be convenient for the official narrative. She refused that premise. She refused the idea that years and children and genuine commitment were less valid than a title that had been given not because of love but because of alliance. She refused to accept that the official world's management of the private one was something she was obligated to cooperate with simply because it was more powerful than what she had. She was not aggressive in the refusal. That is the detail that the people who know this story consistently emphasize. She did not raise her voice, did not make accusations, did not produce the kind of confrontation that the situation, two women, the same man, years of parallel existence, might seem to have set up as inevitable. She was direct in the specific way of someone who has had the conversation they are having many times in their own head before the external version of it finally arrived. She knew what she wanted to say. She said it clearly. She said that what she had with Hamdan was real and that real things did not disappear because someone who had a different kind of connection to the same man asked them to. She said that the children existed and that children could not be asked to leave. She said that she had not entered the private world naively or without understanding the terms, and that the terms as she understood them had never included her obligating herself to exit when the official world found her existence inconvenient. The wife had not anticipated this. She had prepared for various responses, for tears, for apology, for the specific quality of emotional reaction that a person produces when they are caught in a position that the official world has the power to make untenable. She had not prepared for composure, for clarity, for the specific, grounded refusal of a woman who had decided, somewhere before this conversation happened, that she was not going to be managed out of existence by the same systems that had been managing her into invisibility for years. The composure in the face of the asking changed the dynamic of the conversation in a way that the wife had not anticipated and that required her to navigate a response she had not prepared. She left the conversation without what she had come for. Not defeated. She was not a woman who was easily defeated, and the conversation had not produced in her the feeling of defeat. So much as the feeling of a situation that was more complicated than even her full knowledge of it had prepared her for. She had known the girlfriend existed, had known about the years and the children and the private life that had run parallel to the official one. But knowing about the existence and having the existence look at you and refuse to accommodate your request to go are different forms of knowing. The conversation had given her the second form, and the second form required a different kind of thinking about what came next. Hamdan found out about the conversation in the way that people find out about things that happen between the people in their life when those people are significant enough to each other and to him that the things that happen between them eventually make their way to him regardless of whether anyone intended for him to know. He found out. And what the finding out produced, the specific feeling of learning that the two women he had been keeping in separate worlds had spoken directly to each other, and that one had asked the other to leave and the other had refused, was a feeling that had no clean name. Not relief, though something in the girlfriend's refusal was a form of confirmation that what they had was what he had always believed it was. Not dread, though the collision of the two worlds was producing the kind of visibility that the management had always worked to prevent. Something more complicated. The feeling of a person who has been managing two worlds from the inside and who has just learned that the worlds have begun managing themselves from the outside. That the two people inside the separate realities have decided, without consulting him, to have the conversation that he had been careful never to make necessary. The wife had asked, the girlfriend had refused. And the management of the situation, which had always depended on the private world, being willing to remain at the distance the official one required, had been confronted by a reality it had not fully calculated for. The private world had a person in it who was not willing to accept the terms the official world was trying to impose. And the not accepting changed everything about the kind of management the situation was going to require going forward. She refused because refusing was the truth. And she had always been, in the private world, the person whose primary commitment was to the truth of what things actually were rather than the convenience of the official version. The wife had the title, the girlfriend had the truth. And when the title asked the truth to leave, the truth said no. And everything after that had to be navigated around the fact of the no. Subscribe to this channel and hit the bell. Every week I bring you the real story of Sheikh Hamdan, the conversations that happened between the women in his life, the refusals that changed the shape of everything, and the truth about what happens when the private world finally decides it is not going to be managed away on request.